Welcome, students, to Unit 8.4, Learning by Observation. This will be the last subunit for Unit 8. However, before we continue on to observation by learning, let's first discuss how motivation impacts our ability to learn. All right, so let's discuss real quick the two different types of motivation. There's intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is self-motivation. It's motivation that comes from within yourself. All right, this means you do not have to have anyone else motivate you. You want to succeed for your own sake. And individuals who are intrinsically motivated have a strong positive correlation with propensity to learn. Whereas extrinsic motivators who require motivation from outside sources, whether it be teachers or parents, typically have to have a little bit more motivation. And as a result, typically has a negative correlation with desire to learn. And these two concepts of motivation can have significant impacts on lifelong learning implications. So intrinsic motivators will typically tend to pursue knowledge throughout their life, always seeking truth and understanding, whereas extrinsic motivators are typically satisfied with just, surface features and real simple, almost dismissive answers and understandings. Now, we may have discussed several of these concepts before, so if I just kind of talk through it briefly, I apologize, and make sure we discuss these more in depth in class. But remember, observational learning is learning by observing the behaviors of others and then modeling those behaviors. Okay, so if I see someone if I see another student in the hallway helping pick up books and papers that another student had dropped, and then that student who helped is then rewarded by a teacher or a principal, I would then want to model that behavior so then I might be able to get that reward. Okay, or make a new friend possibly. All right, so modeling then is the process of observing and imitating others. When imitating behavior leads to reinforcement or punishes, that becomes social learning theory. Remember, so observational learning is the fundamental basis for the social learning theory. Okay. Now, why does this? What neurologically is the explanation for this? Well, it's the mirror neurons. Mirror neurons fire when observing and mimicking other people's behaviors. Now, you might think because we're mimicking others' behaviors, we have to observe those behaviors. So you might think it's in the occipital lobe. Well, in fact, mirror neurons are in the frontal lobe. Okay, as you can see in the image right here. And again, when other people smile at us, we have a natural inclination to smile back. When people get mad at us and frown at us, we have a natural inclination to respond in a like manner. And the reason that is because the mirror neurons in our frontal lobe recognize those facial features that we are presented with, and then we are going to use our muscles in the frontal lobe to then mimic those interactions. Why do we do this? Why does our brain do this? Because again, we are social beings. We are meant to socialize with one another. Our biological and neurological and biochemical makeup facilitates social interaction. All right, and this is yet again another example of that. So we just talked about social learning theory. The psychologist who developed the social learning theory is this guy right here. His name is Albert Bandura. And how he came up with this theory is he used an experiment. You might be able to see it in the background of this picture. You see this kid in the picture. He's hitting something with a hammer. What he did is he created an isolated room that had a bunch of toys in it. And in that room was one toy called a Bobo doll. It's an inflatable toy that you can punch and kick. It's almost like a big boxing simulation type deal. And so what would happen is the little kid in the room would just be sitting there playing with other toys, over here, playing with like a truck or something. And then what would happen is an adult would enter the room and start punching on that. The adult would enter the room and start punching on this Bobo doll, right? the child would then observe that adult's behavior, and once the adult left the room, the child then would make his way on over to the Bobo doll and start punching and swearing and cursing at the Bobo doll just like the adult did. The child was modeling the behavior of the adult, and this is where we get the social learning theory. All right? When the child punched that Bobo doll, the child probably felt good afterwards, because when you experience physical exertion, you're releasing endorphins and you typically feel better, or you feel energized. Okay? So because of that, that child is probably more likely to continue to punch and rely on physical altercations to solve problems or to make himself feel better. These are called cathartic moments. All right? So that experiment is called the Bobo doll experiment. All right? And this can deter individuals away from pro-social behavior. And this is just interactive behavior between individuals that is positive, constructive, helpful behavior. It's the opposite of antisocial behavior, which is not really reclusive. You're not hiding from society, which most people think, but you're harming social interaction. So when someone walks up to an individual with antisocial behavior disorder, the individual might just start cussing at them or just do something that is not intuitive or not indicative of social interaction. All right. Well, that will conclude our last subunit for Unit 8. And we'll see you guys on Monday and get ready for that test. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.